What if one of the world's largest economies was quietly reshaping an entire continent? While much of the world is watching, China has been making deep inroads into Africa, changing landscapes, economies, and lives in ways we are just beginning to understand. Welcome to Africa Uncovered, where we dig into the stories and strategies that rarely make mainstream headlines. Today, we're exploring the full scope of China's influence in Africa, from economic growth and infrastructure development to potential challenges ahead. How is this partnership shaping the future of Africa? Let's find out. China's relationship with Africa is part of a much broader strategy known as the Belt and Road Initiative. Through this initiative, China has invested billions to build highways, railways, ports, and power plants across the continent, linking trade routes and creating new infrastructure. But the strategy goes beyond simple investment. China provides low-interest loans and credit to African nations for infrastructure projects, which can look highly attractive to cash-strapped governments. Unlike Western loans, these deals are often accompanied by minimal interference in local politics. Some African countries have reaped substantial benefits from these partnerships. Take Ethiopia, where Chinese-built industrial zones are creating jobs and attracting investors from around the world. In Kenya, the standard gauge railway has cut travel times between Nairobi and Mombasa, boosting trade and reducing road traffic congestion. Other successful examples include Djibouti's new port, which has transformed the country into a major shipping hub, and the construction of a multi-billion-dollar hydropower dam in Uganda. These projects bring immediate benefits to local economies and have the potential to improve lives for millions of Africans. But with these developments comes a growing debate. Is Africa falling into a debt trap? Critics argue that these low-interest loans come with long-term costs. For example, in 2018, Zambia had to forfeit some control over its national electricity company due to mounting debt to Chinese lenders. This trend raises concerns over the risk of losing control over key national assets. On the other hand, some economists argue that as long as the debt is managed wisely and infrastructure projects deliver economic returns, these loans can help Africa transition into a new phase of growth. Still, the pressure on African governments to manage these debts without compromising national interests is significant. Another major concern involves job creation and skills transfer. While Chinese projects often promise local employment, critics point out that Chinese companies frequently bring in their own workforce. This can lead to frustration among local communities that expect to see benefits from these projects. In some cases, Chinese companies do provide training programs and skills transfer. Ethiopia's industrial parks, for instance, employ thousands of locals, and some have received technical training. But overall, the balance between Chinese and local workers remains a sticking point. China's growing presence in Africa isn't just economic. There's a significant cultural influence as well. Chinese media outlets are expanding in Africa, broadcasting Chinese news and perspectives, and language centers like Confucius Institutes are opening across the continent. For young Africans, learning Chinese is increasingly seen as a pathway to better opportunities. This soft power approach is intended to build a positive image of China, creating cultural ties that extend beyond business. However, some Africans worry that an influx of foreign media and cultural norms could overshadow traditional African values and lead to cultural homogenization. The relationship between Africa and China also raises questions about political autonomy. Chinese loans typically come with few political conditions, which is appealing to African governments. However, as China gains more economic leverage, African countries may feel pressure to align with Chinese political interests on the global stage. For instance, several African nations have voted alongside China in the United Nations on issues like human rights policies and global trade rules. This growing political alliance raises questions about the long-term implications for Africa's independence in international decision-making. So what do Africans think about China's involvement? Public opinion is mixed. In some nations, people see China as a much-needed partner in economic development, offering a new model of growth without Western strings attached. Others, however, worry about dependency and lack of transparency. Civil society groups have raised concerns over government deals with China that lack public scrutiny. As more Africans speak up, there is a growing call for transparency and a balanced partnership. Africa's relationship with China is complex and multifaceted. While Chinese investment brings the promise of modernization and economic growth, African nations must find a way to ensure these benefits align with their own goals and values. The challenge ahead lies in striking a balance between welcoming foreign investment and safeguarding political and economic sovereignty. Only time will tell how this partnership evolves and whether Africa can leverage it to build a more independent and prosperous future. Thanks for joining us on Africa Uncovered. If you enjoyed this look at China's influence in Africa, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think China is a help or a hindrance to Africa's future? And let us know what other topics you'd like us to cover.